So we're done reading The Wheels of Life. I'm going to start a new book. And I probably won't have too many people following or listening, and I'm okay with that. Some people might tune in, some people might not. It's all right. I'm starting a new book called Sacred Contracts. I started reading this years ago, and started doing the work. And it's really fascinating stuff. Anyway, it's by Carolyn Miss. I'm going to skip the acknowledgments and appreciations, but we're going to start with a poem by Robert Frost, which was my dad's favorite poet. The Trial by Existence by Robert Frost. And from a cliff top is proclaimed the gathering of souls for birth. The trial by existence named, the obscuration upon earth. And the more loitering are turned to view once more the sacrifice of those who for some good discerned will gladly give up paradise. Read that line again. And the more loitering are turned to view once more the sacrifice of those who for some good discerned will gladly give up paradise. And none are taken but who will, having first heard the life read out that opens earthward good and ill, beyond the shadow of a doubt. Nor is there wanting in the press some spirit to sit to stand simply forth, heroic in nakedness, against the uttermost of earth. But always God speaks at the end, one thought in agony of strife, the bravest would have by for friend, the memory that he chose the life, but the pure fate to which you go admits no memory of choice, or the woe were not earthly, memory of choice, or the woe were not earthly woe, to which you gave the assenting voice. And so the choice must be again, but the last choice is still the same, and the awe passes wonder then, and a hush falls for all acclaim. And God has taken a flower of gold and broken it, and used therefrom the mystic link to find and hold spirit to matter till death come. 'Tis of the essence of life here, though we choose greatly still to lack the lasting memory at all clear, that life has for us on the rack nothing but what we somehow chose. Thus are we wholly stripped of pride in the pain that has but one close, bearing it crushed and mystified. I don't understand that poem much at all, but I think through reading this book it might make more sense. Okay, so here's the introduction. The oldest wisdom in the world tells us we can consciously unite with the divine while in this body. For this man is really born. If he misses his destiny, nature is not in a hurry. She will catch him up someday and compel him to fulfill her secret purpose. That is Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, President of India, 1962 to 1967. We all want to know why we are here. What is our mission in life? I don't know if we all want to know that, but I think at least passes through our minds, all of our minds. I think some people just go along. I want to know why I'm here, what my mission is. I have a sneaking suspicion I'm on the right track. Those people who know it are easy to spot. Their lives shine with meaning. Their perception of their life's purpose gives them the strength to live through the rough times, as well to enjoy the good. Many people, however, are confused or are completely in the dark about their reason for living. Through my years as a medical intuitive, someone who can read a person's internal physiological condition intuitively rather than by physical examination and diagnosis, I have frequently been asked, why am I sick? How can I heal? Even more often and more insistently, I'm asked, why am I here? What is my real purpose? What should I be doing with my life? This lack of self-understanding and direction is a health problem itself, in a sense, for it can lead to all sorts of emotional stress, including depression, anxiety, and fatigue. And when these stresses or negative emotions become entrenched, they can contribute to the development of an illness. It is not only your mind that wants to know your mission. This knowledge is vitally important to your body and spirit as well. A confused or directionless life has other consequences. Lack of knowledge of your mission can become a destructive force in your relationships. As the late theologian, mystic, and Harvard professor Howard Thurman often said, there are two questions that we have to ask ourselves. The first is, where am I going? The second is, who will go with me? If you ever get these questions in the wrong order, you are in trouble. Interesting. I'll read that again. I never thought about that. It's interesting. So Howard Thurman often said there are two questions that we have to ask ourselves. The first is, where am I going? The second is, who will go with me? If you get these questions in the wrong order, you are in trouble. Without self-understanding, without aim, we can hurt others around us, us as well as ourselves. I know that from personal experience. If we don't have a clear sense of how to see the bigger picture when things go wrong, we are not able to respond appropriately to events or people. A man named Philip once told me that he would probably still be happily married if he had only had a better sense of what he should be doing and where he belonged. He had been frustrated for years, and his chronic discontent took such a toll on his wife that she finally left him. Even after his divorce, however, Philip was unable to make the kinds of changes in his life and career that he needed to make. The problem with change, Philip told me, is that one change is never enough. Once the process starts, you can't stop. He is right, of course, and yet, as the renowned Jungian psychologist James Hillman once said, you have to give up the life you have to get the life that's waiting for you. If Philip could have seen where he was going, he would have been able to act more appropriately. He would not have been so self-involved, and he and his wife would both have been better off. But he could not find a way to get himself on track. After helping people find and use their inner compass for more than 17 years, I have come to believe that this absence of spiritual and emotional orientation has become an epidemic. Besides being a personal problem for many people, it is also a global concern. From a cosmically practical point of view, what good is it to the universe to have a planet filled with souls who have no idea whatsoever why they are here or what they are supposed to be doing? When people asked me how they could fix or heal their lives, how they could find the right direction in which to head, I often would direct them to pray for guidance. But as valuable as prayer is, I wondered if there was not some other definite way or process by which they could bring clarity to their lives and find their purpose. No one can see everything in advance, of course, but if we had a way of looking at the symbolic meaning of our experiences, we would be more prepared to face and accommodate the inevitable changes. Rather than fight change and build up emotional scar tissue, we would be able to choose to see events in a different light, accept the change, and get on with our lives. Given the personal and global significance of knowing our mission, why has it been so difficult to find out what it is? How can we best search and inquire? Why do some people find their mission easily while others struggle for a clue? How can we get better at figuring it out? For our own good, each of us needs to learn what our mission is, because the details of how we live our lives acclimate to create health or illness. As I discovered after conducting more than 8,000 medical intuitive readings in those 17 years, our biography becomes our biology, which I wrote about in The Autonomy of Spirit. In other words, the little troubles and major traumas that we go through take up residence and live in our bodies and affect or block our energy. So it stands to reason that the further we stray from our true mission in life, the more frustrated we will become, and the more out of sync our energy will be. By coming to know your mission, you can live your life in a way that makes best use of your energy. When you are working well with your energy, you are also making the best expression of your personal power. I call this living in accord with your sacred contract. In my intuitive readings, I have been able to help people work more consciously with their energy by spotting the traumas or other life events that have lingered in their energy fields. When I bring these memories back up into their awareness, they can often see how they have lost their energy or power through their over-identification with these wounds or experiences. Once they see these energy leaks, they can proceed to call back their spirit. While this remembering can be helpful, most people can already recall such major experiences without my help. But where I believe that I have genuinely assisted people is by helping them to identify and interpret the underlying patterns of thoughts and beliefs that color their memories. In these sub-patterns lie the interpretations and meanings that you assign to your experiences. These interpretations become cellular memories and carry the emotional energy charge that affects your biography and consequently your biology. When you remember, for example, that you excelled in math at school, that memory of success might have a positive, inspiring effect on your body and mind. But if your success in math caused resentment or alienated you from jealous friends or siblings, it will also carry a negative emotional charge. Perhaps this negative charge attaches itself to every subsequent success, and you begin to associate guilt with achievements. Say, however, that your experience of these emotional complications actually prepared you to face later challenges. Rather than being angry at those jealous friends or siblings, you could become grateful for their contribution to your life training. By reading your own energy, by becoming aware of the lens through which you see your world, you can change your mind and change your life. In detecting the emotional charge in your biography, you can begin to see how the fragments of your history have worked together in ways that have affected your past, your present, and the state of your health. This perspective is what I call symbolic sight. Seeing your life in broad strokes and bright pieces allows you to redraw your conception of your future and fill in the fine interpretive lines more consciously. Symbolic sight enables you to get back your energy or spirit and heal emotionally, spiritually, and sometimes even physically. Symbolic sight will be an important method of working with your energy to bring your sacred contract into focus. When I read someone symbolically, I see his energy in all his individual roles, steaming out and around him. Yet I simultaneously see him as a unified sum of all his parts. And I also see him as a single cell connected to a greater matrix of energy. In my readings, my subjects become human holographs. Their overall energy pattern is reflected in their individual cells, just as our individual souls hum actively within a kind of global soul compromising all life on the planet. Our words, thoughts, deeds, and visions influence our individual health, just as they affect the health of everyone around us. As vital parts of a larger universal spirit, we each have been put here on this earth to fulfill a sacred contract that enhances our personal spiritual growth while contributing to the evolution of the entire global soul. Our life's mission or contract cannot be defined or measured simply by our external life. However, your purpose is not only your career or hobby or romantic relationships. A contract is your overall relationship to your personal power and your spiritual power. It is how you work with your energy and whom you give it to. It is also how much you are willing to surrender to divine guidance. Although a contract is not a physical details of your life, you can use those details to figure out what your contract is. Your life is composed of many facets that shimmer and reflect both your physical and your internal energy. In attempting to grasp the whole of this reflection, you can discern and define your mission. Just as each fragment of a hologram contains the entire image, your mission is reflected, although maybe from a slightly different angle, within each of these many individual energy rays. Still, it takes practice to learn to see the larger picture in these fragments, to learn to add them together to get the sum of your mission. Discovering your contract is bound to give you surprises. You're going to have rugs pulled out from under you and realizations that rock you. But in the process, you will learn how to see symbolically, how to manage your personal power, and how to fulfill your sacred contract. In my previous books, Autonomy of the Spirit and Why People Don't Heal and How They Can, I explained some of the ways that energy works, how it organizes itself around our 7 emotional centers, our chakras, how you can learn to read your energy and hone your intuition to see where your spiritual and physical disruptions or diseases originate. I taught how and why energy could become blocked or distorted, and how this blockage, which is often connected to unfinished business in the past, could be cleared so that you could heal. Usually, the emotional or spiritual healing was tied into learning the lesson of the emotional center or centers involved in the illness. Sometimes the lesson was the illness itself, and learning to work with that form of energy brought insight into the mental and emotional changes that needed to be made. After many thousands of readings, I came to the conclusion that an organizing principle, even greater than the interplay of the chakras, is shaping the energy within each of us and shaping our lives as it does so. I began to identify universal forms of cosmic intelligence that are directly involved in the day-to-day organizing of our lives. In fact, with every reading that I did after 1989, what I could only call an archetypical pattern stepped forward out of the details and fragments of each life and assumed a definite shape, offering clear insight into that person's psyche and why her life was the way it was. These patterns, often ancient in origin, populate our minds and live in ways that affect us deeply. Yet we are generally unaware of them. These patterns of intelligence are archetypes, dynamic living forms of energy that are shaped in many people's thoughts and emotions across cultures and countries. During one reading about 10 years ago, for instance, while I was looking for emotional data in a woman named Laura, I almost dismissed an energy hit. While it didn't seem significant to me at the time, I saw a pair of eyes flashing an imperious, hypocritical look. I mentioned this image to Laura, who said that her husband always looked at her that way, judgmentally, as if he were the master and she the servant. Indeed, Laura herself always had a look, too, one that silently begged for approval from her husband. Yet to Laura, her husband's condescending glances were the energy symbol of their painful marriage. After we spoke, Laura went to several women's support groups, and eventually she understood that she could not wait for her husband's permission to be who she was or who she wanted to become. She realized that she was allowing her husband to make her feel inadequate and powerless, and that his condescending glances symbolized his attitude that she was not his equal. She also sensed that he was so afraid she would leave him that he had to keep her disempowered, or metaphorically barefoot and pregnant. In time, they went to counseling together and were able to make changes that kept their marriage alive while allowing each of them to grow together. Seeing herself enmeshed in the energy pattern of servant and master allowed Laura to break that pattern and become her own master. In working with this archetype, she was able to perform a greater service. Laura came to embody what is positive in the servant by serving the greater good, helping her husband see beyond his fears, and changing her marriage for the better. Learning to read the archetypical patterns that influence your energy is the natural complement to working with the energy of the chakras. My eye itches. Just as the energy of your chakras work together to provide a map of physical and energy information, the collective body of your archetypes produces a view of the governing forces of your psyche and soul. The interrelationship of forces explains why I was able to move so naturally from reading the energy of chakras to reading the energy of archetypes. The energy body that surrounds you, which is created by the chakras, contains all the data of your biology and your biography. So it makes sense that this energy would manifest in patterns of archetypes that affect your life. So to work with these big energies, these archetypical patterns, you have to step away from your life. Step up and back from the detailed brushstrokes that make up your energy self-portrait to see the whole picture. Working with your archetypes involves seeing your life in symbols at the center of a panoramic vista. From this vantage point, you are able to take into account all parts of your life. You don't just focus on the major events or the significant wounds. In the 1990s, I began teaching seminars on these archetypical energies. As my students learned to identify their archetypical patterns, then link the characteristics of each archetype to crucial behaviors and relationships, they often get instant clues to their life's mission. The energy of archetype and its manifestation in our psyches and lives is so pervasive and intimate that no part of our lives exists separately from at least one archetypical pattern. Usually, no fewer than 12 are our constant companions. Each has a story to tell you. Each brings with it the power of the world myths and legends into which it has figured over time, and the energy of the patterns of belief and behavior out of which it was created. Archetypes are the architects of our lives. They are the energy companions through whom we can learn to understand ourselves, as Laura did. These physiological, emotional patterns, how we live and whom we love, can lead us to a profound understanding of our purpose. Their energy can connect us to our higher sacred contract, to our greater mission on the planet. As I saw in my reading of Laura, there are no insignificant relationships. Every experience that we have contains purpose and meaning. Each event, each person in our lives embodies an energetic fragment of our own psyche and soul. Our individual spiritual task is to recognize and integrate all of them into our awareness so that the greater pattern of our mission can shine forth in its full dimensions. This realization eventually became the genesis of this book. In Sacred Contracts lies a process that helps you to discover and integrate the fragments of your psyche. It is a guide to intense self-examination for the purpose of finding your individual archetypical companions and working with them to realize your life's mission and sacred contract. Moreover, this book is an introduction to a mystery school. It's the study of a different sense of time and space that we inhabit through our relationships, which are really our contracts with other people. The language of this mystery school is one of spiritual alchemy. With it, we'll learn to transform heavy physical relationships and emotions into spiritual gold. This process involves prayer and contemplation. It also requires examining all the fragments of your life experiences and relationships. You'll be researching your archetypes' energy chemistry, how they express and assert themselves in and through your life. By discovering and working with your individual archetypical companions, your connections to the cosmic forces directing your life, you will consciously affect the course of your life. You are about to embark on a journey into archetypical dimensions of life, a dimension of consciousness that contains all of us collectively and yet somehow also individually. For although the way you express your archetypes is unique to you, these energies correspond to the archetypes of other people in your life. They interact. Everyone has a child archetype, for example. And so the inner child in you connects you to the inner child within everyone else. Learning to read your own archetypes allows you to read other people's archetypes as well, and it provides you with a better capacity for understanding and connecting with your loved ones, family, friends, colleagues, and even strangers. Carl Jung believed that archetypes live in a collective unconscious through which all souls are connected. The collective unconscious holds the energy of all who have participated in an archetype through the ages. The stories, myths, legends, and prototypes. The stories and histories, briefly offered in the appendix at the end of this book, can help you identify which archetypical energies most influence you. Knowledge of the archetypes, in turn, helps you to understand why certain relationships have been necessary in your life and why you have had to take on specific duties that either surprised and delighted you or seemed burdensome and destructive. You learn again and again in working with archetypes that everything has its role, regardless of how painful or joyful it may be. After you have determined your archetypes and worked with them for a while, the acclamation of insights they give you will tip you into a greater revelation. Your mission emerges in the purest form. I was born to serve God's poor, declared Mother Teresa. Before she could state that, however, she faced enormous difficulties, endured harsh criticisms that were necessary so that she could intensify her resolve, her social skills and contracts, and her spiritual growth. Even though the antagonists in her youth tried her courage and seemed to impede her progress, in truth, they served her most by refining her purpose. For instance, the first two religious orders that Mother Teresa entered made her discontented because neither was founded to do the charitable work she was being guided to do. She eventually founded a new community of her own to serve the needs of the poor, as well as her sacred contract. This book, then, is a product of my wanting to share with people my insights about our individual and collective life purpose over nearly 2 decades of working with the energies of the human spirit. It presents a new language of spiritual interpretation to help you become fluent in understanding yourself and your life's mission. You'll first learn about the nouns of your psyche, your archetypical spiritual companions. You'll also see how their energies works in your life, the verbs of archetypical energy and manifestation, and how their actions express your mission in small and big phrases. You'll eventually learn to build bigger and bigger verbal pictures of your own life until out of it all emerges a whole, profound, new view of your full potential, your purpose in life, and your higher sacred contract. Sacred Contracts is an interactive book. You are meant to respond to the stories and teachings in a way that will help you understand the nature and purpose of your contracts and the role played by your personal archetypes. So please get yourself a journal or a notebook in which to write observations and associations that come to you as you read these chapters. I'll be asking you to remember intuitions and other glimmerings you've had of people you were meant to meet and things you were meant to do. And beginning with chapter 5, you will need to keep a record of your answers to a series of questions, as well as insights and impressions that will arise when you begin exploring your archetypical patterns. If possible, dedicate one notebook just to information and insights you develop in working with this book, and use it as you continue to work with your archetypes and sacred contract. By developing symbolic sight and archetypical language, you will grasp the whole of your life with a level of spiritual clarity that can heal the emotional and spiritual wounds you have accumulated and fill you with awe that your life is also of great importance to everyone you encounter. It becomes possible for you to trust that everything is meant to come your way will arrive in due time. And you will be with the right people at the right moment, and the divine guidance endlessly flows into your soul. It can't be otherwise. We manage our contracts, but the divine takes care of the sacred. So that's the first little chapter, and I'm just going to take a quick glimpse back here about, okay, so let's just read a couple of these, or I will read a couple of these. Gallery of Archetypes. Okay, so I'm just going to read 2 of them. Space limitations make it impossible to list all of the most common archetypical patterns in detail. Many of these overlap to a large extent, and so I've included related archetypes in the heading of the dominant listing: artist, artisan, craftsperson, sculptor, weaver. If you relate to a variant not listed, say the photographer, then simply substitute it. I've tried to provide a few examples of each archetype drawn from popular films. There we go. Each archetype represents a fundamental learning experience or process that is meant to guide us throughout our lives. In evaluating whether pattern is a part of your intimate family of 12, pay special attention to whether you can perceive a continuum of this learning process in your history rather than just isolated incidents. Never evaluate your connection to an archetype by the obvious. You have to stretch your imagination and burrow into yourself to discover your life patterns, lessons, and gifts. This inner knowledge does not surface easily. If you feel that you have an archetype that is not listed here, describe the patterns of behavior that you identify as an archetypical in nature and come up with examples from the arts or mythology. Okay, so the first archetype that she lists is the addict. And then in parentheses, she has, these are ones that can replace it, conspicuous consumer, glutton, workaholic, also gambler. Every one of us is touched by the addict archetype. The only question is how much of our lives is consumed by it. Besides the usual suspects, drugs, alcohol, food, and sex, one can be addicted to work, sports, television, exercise, computer games, spiritual practice, negative attitudes, and the kinds of thrills that bring on adrenaline rushes. In its positive aspects, this archetype helps you recognize when an outside substance, habit, relationship, or any expression of life has more authority over your willpower than does your inner spirit. Confronting addiction and breaking the hold that a pattern or substance has on you can impart great strength to your psyche. Discovering the empowerment that comes with perseverance has a lifelong impact. Becoming a reference point for what you are able to accomplish. In the words of one former alcoholic, I know now that if I can quit drinking, I can do anything. From a symbolic perspective, the shadow aspect of the addict represents a struggle with willpower and the absence of self-control. People who are extremely intellectual or emotional frequently have a close link to this archetype because they struggle to balance these powers. Without this internal balance, the will may give up its power to an external substance that exerts authority, providing shadow order to your life. The shadow addict compromises your integrity and honesty. Many addicts, for example, steal as a means of supporting their habits. In evaluating your connection to the addict, review how many of your life's challenges concern external substance or a consistent, domineering pattern of trying to maintain order in your life. Although that challenge is a part of all of our lives, the degree to which an addiction controls you and your lifestyle determines whether the addict is a part of your intimate family of 12. For instance, you can be inconsistent with your exercise program, yet quite disciplined in your spiritual practice. Needing a substance or practice or person so intensely or regularly that you compromise relationships, finances, integrity, character, or emotional and psychological well-being, however, indicates that you should look very seriously at this archetype as a possible choice. And then she lists some films: Jack Lemmon and Lee Remick in Days of Wine and Roses, alcohol; Ben Stiller in Permanent Midnight, heroin; Dom DeLuise in Fatso, food; Claire Bloom in The Chapman Report, sex; drama, A Long Day's Journey into Night, that's Morphine by Eugene O'Neill; fiction, The Basketball Diaries, heroin by Jim Carroll; Under the Volcano, Mescal by Malcolm Lowry; religion and myths, Soma, Vedic god of intoxication as well as the intoxicating drink itself and the plant from which it is made; Tantalus, a son of Zeus and king of Cyplios in Greece. He was invited to share the food of the gods, but abused the honor and was punished by being tantalized for all eternity by food and drink he could not reach. Advocate, attorney, defender, legislator, lobbyist, environmentalist. Okay, so that's the next archetype that she lists, is the advocate. So the first archetype she listed was addict. Then she lists advocate. So I'll read about that tomorrow. Anyway, this is going to be fun. That's it.